let's start with dissecting Arsenal City. And to do that, it's too big a game for us. So we have to bring in Mark Ogden as well. Let's just start at the top. Arsenal come out 1-0 winners. Before we talk about how the game unfolded, I was struck by the fact that both managers found the need to throw a bit of a tactical curveball at us. Certainly Arsenal by playing Jorginho in midfield instead of Havertz or Fabio Vieira. And arguably Pep as well. Bernardo Silva in the Rodri role, was it? And of course, some people take issue with Guardiola as left back, and also Grealish and Doku on the bench.
Yeah, it was a strange one. What was Jorginho going to bring to Arsenal? Because
he would control the ball and control the game. That's what Spanish managers like to say.
But I don't think he did control the game, because Man City controlled the possession of the game, of the ball for most of the time, with, as you said, Bernardo Silva going back into a deep line position in between the two centre halves. Arsenal pressed with two players. It was Odegaard and Nketiah, but Man City always had the spare player, so they could go wide. But it's what Man City did with the ball when they got it to Ake and when they got it to Diaz in open space. They never went anywhere with it, and that's where you have to then look at what was the point of keeping the ball at the back for so long. Was it just to quieten the crowd down, which they did at the start of the game, Man City? But I couldn't see where they were going to penetrate. That was the big problem.
Was it that obvious to do? But Augie, like both guys saying like, "Oh, let me try to throw something unexpected," but then ultimately, because arguably Arsenal's game plan didn't necessarily work either.
Yeah, well, Arsenal's was forced on them, wasn't it, by the fact that Saka wasn't fit, and that was a big one, and obviously Martinelli started on the bench, so Arteta's options were limited a bit, and I guess having Jorginho would enable him to keep the ball better and just have a bit more control of the game, as you were saying. City, I couldn't get my head around the fact that he had Gvardiol at left back. I think Gvardiol's a great defender, but you've got a left-sided defender in Ake playing centre half, and you've got Gvardiol, a right-sided defender, playing a left back. It didn't work, and especially with the fact that you've got no Saka bombing down the right-hand side, then City had the option, or the ability to use that and counter against it, but they didn't do it. And it was really strange at times watching this really clunky back four, and then you've got Bernardo dropping even deeper than Ruben Dias at times. It was just a little bit like City were playing. We're trying to play with Arsenal, being a bit too clever, as happens at times.
But they did that in the Community Shield, exactly the same thing. The first half of the Community Shield, Arsenal never got a kick of the ball. Manchester City just dominated possession without any sort of penetration. It kept on going. They'd broken the first line, so they got their wide centre halves out with the ball. They get it into their fullbacks, but instead of playing the next ball forward, they then go back. So now the next question is, what were the front players doing? And I was looking at the game and saying, come on, Haaland, you've got to make a run. You've got to try and spin in behind the opposition. Give the back players a chance to play it forward. Or were they not trying to do that? Were they going to say, well, just keep it at the back. We'll play slow football. Eventually we'll get it into and get it into wide areas, get crosses into the box.
I do get the feeling that maybe, obviously, these are both attacking managers in terms of DNA, but from Pep's perspective, he's like, if I get a draw here, it's not the end of the world. Ultimately, he would have had a draw, but for the shape of Nathan Ake's face, right? Because when Martinelli's shot bounces off his head and goes in the back of the goal. By the way, this whole other thing, to me, that's an own goal. I know, but it was on target. I mean, but is it gonna be saved? But whatever. So he could tell himself that maybe that would have worked. But then equally on the other side, if we're talking about incidents, Kovacic, a lot of people were surprised he stayed on the pitch. Mark, I know you have feelings on this.
Yeah, I mean, it was a clear red card for me. And I was at the Tottenham game last week when the referee was told to go to the monitor and check out whether Curtis Jones had fouled the Tottenham player. And he went to the monitor, saw the incident, red carded him. Yesterday, Michael Oliver didn't look at the monitor. Now, if the VAR is...
He didn't because he wasn't asked to.
No, but surely if it's being reviewed, he should say, can he have an opinion himself? It's his game. Can he not say, I need to check this out? Because it was a really bad tackle. And I think we're going back 20, 30, 40 years now. The tackle from behind was outlawed, wasn't it? It was the most dangerous tackle of the lot. That was a tackle from behind onto his ankle. And I was texting Gab during the game. Marco van Basten, one of the greatest players I've ever seen, his career was finished because of an accumulation of bad tackles from behind. Now, that is the worst kind of tackle. Odegaard's ligaments could have been shredded by that tackle. Didn't send him off. 5 minutes later, he had the opportunity to send another yellow card and send him off for the tackle on Rice and didn't even book him. Now, that for me, Kovacic should have been on the pitch after the first one, never mind the second.
Well, it was madness by Kovacic, really, to make.
So he should have been off.
Yeah, he should have been off. Not whether he gave a straight red card for that second tackle, but the fact that he's almost giving him a warning, giving him a chance, and then the next tackle, you think, well, he's going to go now, but he got away with it.
All right, let's stick with the Kovacic tackle because, Rob, I want to give you a little more time because Mark described it as, the kind of tackle that 30, 40 years ago was perhaps more frequent and led to, I don't know what you're observing. You mentioned Marco van Basten. You probably could have mentioned others. Norman Whiteside, perhaps.
But Van Basten's a famous case, isn't he? The guy that whose career was ended by this bad tackle that was outlawed.
What I would do is I'd say that
give us some context because you played in that era, and you also suffered some bad tackles. And I could see
exactly what Kovacic was trying to do, and it wasn't to kick Rice. He saw the ball was played short to Rice, and Rice had one pass, and it was out to the fullback. And what Kovacic tried to do was slide down the side of Rice and block the ball being played at, but he got it wrong. And he ends up going into the standing foot of Rice. So it ends up being a bad tackle. And it doesn't matter whether there's intent or not in the current game. He makes a bad challenge because he goes into the ankle of Rice with his stud showing. And once you go to ground, you're always likely to get sent off for that. And he probably should have been sent off for that. The amazing thing was that he then tried to make the same tackle only 5 minutes later, and he had to go. And the referee decided not to send him off.
I'm going to stick up for Kovacic for a second, make the argument, right? Because many times, I think even who've played football at a very low level, like I have, lower than you guys, would know that there are situations where, I'm not trying to hurt him, but if I leave my foot in a little bit and I do and I mistime it, not the end of the world, it's just a foul, right? Do you think that comes into it a little bit?
A little bit, but not. So I'd have been, if I was the referee and gone to the monitor, I'd have known that there was no intent there, but under the current laws, it ends up being a reckless challenge, and it's a dangerous challenge, and it could injure the player that you're making it on. The stupid thing was, from Kovacic's point of view, he put himself under so much pressure because he makes a foul only 5 minutes later, which he should have got a second yellow card for. And then the manager himself decides to keep him on, which, although we were talking about doesn't affect the game, it does, because Kovacic couldn't make any tackles. You're the holding midfield player. Bernardo Silva's already been booked. The two holding midfield players, Bernardo Silva was a bit deeper, they can't make tackles anymore in the whole of that second half.
That actually sets up, realize what a gaping hole Rodri left. We're going to get to that in a second, but just sticking with this, obviously, the second one, Oliver doesn't give it as a yellow because whatever, he didn't deem it as serious as the first or whatever. I would hope it's not the stupid, like, I don't want to spoil the game by sending somebody off. Oliver, I think, is too good a referee. He's too good a track record for that. However, and obviously it's not reviewable by VAR either. On the first one, though, you were wondering why the VAR, who was John Brooks, decided not to. This is John Brooks, the referee, not John Brooks, the former Bournemouth player, incidentally, the little Welsh guy. Yeah. Why he didn't send Oliver to the screen?
Well, I wonder sometimes whether there's a hierarchy. Well, there is a hierarchy with referees. We know that Michael Oliver is up there with Anthony Taylor as supposedly the best English referee. Now, if you're deemed to be of a lower level than that, or you're not quite as good as Oliver, then have you got the courage to say to him, look, I think you've made a mistake there? Because basically you're telling somebody who's better than you or more senior than you to review his mistake. So that's a hard one. But what I would do there is just make it mandatory where if it's being reviewed as a serious foul play or a reckless foul, the referee has to go over regardless. You can't have it at Tottenham one week where the referee goes over to assess it and the week later he doesn't. So if the VAR is reviewing what he deems to be a serious foul play, then the referee should go and see it.
So I have some experience with this, having spoken endlessly to a whole bunch of referees, and including the inventors of VAR, about this and protocols that keep getting done. And I think what they would say to that is, if you call him over every time, you are essentially re-refereeing the game, and you get all sorts of. There's enough people, especially in this country, who want to abolish VAR altogether, right? That means more interruptions, more dead times, right? So it is a skill about knowing when to call the referee over and when not to.
The problem is, Gab, sorry, but the incident was shown. Well, the VAR was flashed on the big screen. Serious foul play, check. Now, if the whole crowd knows it's going on, and the referee just stands with his hands on his hips, that's when it falls down a little bit. If you review it,
because it would actually take him no longer to run over to the side and look at it as it was waiting for the decision to be made.
Right. I think the difference, though, is the way the VAR works is there's people selecting images, showing images, and VAR is making an assessment. If a referee who is running around the pitch and as he's running on the game, all of a sudden he can watch along with them, but there's a reason why they present the most important images to the referee, who needs time to assess them. So all the other guff that they need to go through and stuff, I think the thinking, and I think it's correct thinking, is we don't want the referee involved with this. The referee only gets involved when it's obvious. Which we've heard when there's enough evidence where you're pretty sure the referee will change his mind if he sees it again, or if the referee tells you he didn't have a clear view. Now, what should have happened here, and which maybe did happen, we don't know because we don't have the audio, is there would have been a conversation where they say, "What did you see, Michael Oliver?" And he tells them what he saw. And then the VAR says, "Okay, if you saw it clearly, are these pictures matching what the referee told me that he saw?" Because if the picture shows something else, then I call him over. That's very, very roughly how this system's supposed to work. And when you say about like, "Oh, but I don't want, I'm John Brooks, nobody knows who I am, I can't go and contradict the great Michael Oliver," I would hope that everybody's grown up enough about this. I think even the biggest refereeing ego
Look, we're
in the
frightened
world,
of challenging you because you're
exactly.
the
You
big wig of the programme, so we can't challenge you.
That isn't real world thinking because every 2 weeks they meet up at St George's Park and there'll be a hierarchy. There'll be the
listen,
big dogs and the little dogs and which one's which.
There's a hierarchy, but it's pretty obvious that John Brooks with 14 replay cameras is going to have more information than Michael Oliver without 14 replay cameras, right? That's pretty obvious. And secondly, you guys are all on the same team. So you're all there to help each other. That's the purpose of VAR.
So as John Brooks,
you have to be a psychopath.
As John Brooks let Oliver down there by not saying you need to look at the monitor. Whose fault is it?
No,
I think if Oliver goes to the side of the pitch and looks at it, he would send him off.
Maybe Brooks looked at it, had a conversation. Oliver said, "No, I saw it clearly. For me, it's not a yellow. I saw exactly what you described. He tries to go and get the ball. He just mistimes it. I don't think it was reckless, blah, blah, blah." And if Brooks says, "Yeah, the pictures kind of match that," then that's it. Then that's Brooks' judgment.
So when Howard Webb picks his referees for the next round of Premier League games in a couple of weeks, which one should get demoted, if any? Should it be John Brooks or Michael Oliver? Because if that was a kind of a junior referee, they'd probably be sent to Gillingham next week as a kind of a punishment.
Gillingham is a lovely place. It's in Kent,
but it's
the
not
Garden of England.
But it's not the Premier League. So
you don't demote somebody for one thing, but you do get marked down in your assessment. So I'm assuming when Howard Webb and his boffins look at it, and they say, "All right, Michael Oliver got this one wrong. It should have been a red." Or maybe Michael Oliver got this one right.
Or maybe John Brooks got it wrong for not saying to Oliver, "Mate, you should come over."
Maybe.
I think it's the VAR that's got it wrong.
But they'll assess the audio and based on the conversation. There's a process they have to go through. If they didn't go through the process properly, then they'll be marked down.
But I think there's another element to this as well. This debate that we're having now, this will fade away within 24 hours because Arsenal won the game. Now, last week, when Liverpool were wronged by the Luis Diaz offside situation at Tottenham, that lasted nearly a whole week because Liverpool lost and it certainly cost them a point, maybe cost them 3 points, maybe at the end of the season it could cost them the title, we don't know. But because Arsenal won the game, the significance of that mistake wasn't there, so the debate moves on.
Yeah, I also think, with all due respect to Mateo Kovacic and his importance to Manchester City's world domination, the incident at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium was far, far more serious and far more egregious.
But if Man City...
And it's beyond human error because it's the guy not wanting to correct his mistake.
But if Man City had 10 men for 50 minutes...
But that's great.
Then Arsenal got a great chance of winning. They won in the end anyway, so Mikel Arteta didn't mention it. If Arsenal had lost that game, Mikel Arteta would have been straight into the press conference demanding that game be replayed.
But there's a difference between the two. One is you quite clearly see he's onside.
Yeah.
The other one is still... you can still debate it.
It's
is
a
it
red
a bad
card.
chance? Could he have done this? Could he have done that? So the one's a debate. The other one is absolutely onside.
When the VAR himself and the Tottenham Hotspur said he was offside.
Yeah.
Except he did it after he said check complete. On the Rodri point, I mean, you made a great point. This underscores how Rodri may be Manchester City's most important player. Maybe even more than Haaland, because as we see when Haaland not on top of his game, they still generally keep winning, other than the last 2 games. Without Rodri, there's so many things that break down. Just a reminder, how annoyed, Robbo, do you think Rodri is and Pep is with Rodri?
Well, Pep was furious with Rodri when it happened.
That red card, and just as a reminder, is Nottingham Forest. He squares up to Morgan Gibbs-White, I think it is.
They're 2-0 up at the time.
They're 2-0 up at the time. It's the beginning of the second half. They're arguing over the ball, throwing, they get into each other's face. It is one of the most unnecessary red cards. Can you just take me to that? Something tells me you probably very few occasions where you snapped, lost your cool, and had a massive brain fart like Rodri did in that game. But you've probably seen other people do it.
I was booked many, many times, but never for retaliation or arguing, or it was always for a foul.
Right. But you've seen it happen.
I've seen it happen.
And you've coached players where it's happened.
And
how does it? Is it just a human thing? Like
I don't. Sometimes I think it's just stupidity. Sometimes I
but
think
Rodri's not stupid. He doesn't do this often, right?
But sometimes players do it for effect. They do it, to wind up the crowd. They do it for I'm going to show you I'm boss, whatever it may be. He didn't think he was going to get sent off when it happened, and then suddenly he realised I've gone too far, and he gets himself sent off. And it has affected Man City because we're talking about a player that can, and I always talk about midfield players, need to be able to do both sides of the game. When he's playing as the holding midfield player, not only does he get on the ball and make the team tick, but he can defend as well. You look at the players that were on the field yesterday. Rice can do it for Arsenal. Jorginho can get on the ball and make things happen. He can't defend. Bernardo Silva can get on the ball and make things happen. He can't defend, he can't run, he can't make challenges as Rodri can. And I would say Kovacic was playing that little bit higher. And again, he's a player that likes to get on the ball and make things happen. He's not the same player when the opposition have the ball. And that's caused Man City problems in the last 3 defeats they've had.
Yeah, I mean, I think with Rodri as well, it affects Haaland because they don't have the same control of the game, the control of the ball. And when that's the case, then Haaland's not getting the same opportunity in terms of chances that are created by players further up the pitch. With Haaland as well, he's missing De Bruyne in a big way because De Bruyne was the guy that could spot his runs and could pick him out, and he's missing Grealish. So you've got 3 big elements to Haaland's goal. I don't think Haaland scored since Rodri was suspended. No. Might be wrong. But anyway, so Rodri makes a difference to Haaland. De Bruyne does, and Grealish does. So you've got all these things coming together, but he's still a top scorer in the Premier League.
Wearing our Captain Hindsight uniforms, going back to the tactics thing, there were 2 big calls. Right, one is David Raya. I'm glad Juls isn't here so I can bring it up and say, and again, with all the love and respect in the world for Arteta, what he said at the time, it's just like a midfielder you choose based on the opponent, Raya or Ramsdale. It's obviously not. I'm assuming, given that Raya has played every game that he's played every game since he chose Raya, except for that League Cup nonsense they were involved in. It basically says that no, Raya is his number 1, right? Unless Arteta wakes up tomorrow and says, we won't be playing from the back. We'll just see we'll have the goalkeeper boot it, in which case Ramsdale might play. This thing with Raya playing for, how much does it add? And I want to get you, Robbo, on this, but also you too, Mark, because you've got a piece coming out on this very subject.
In terms of
if you get pressed, you have an extra guy you can pass to, right? There's always a free man. That's the idea.
So you've got to have a goalkeeper that's decent on the ball. That's a must in today's game. And it's not just playing out from the back, it's decision making. Raya looked as though he couldn't see a decision. And that comes down to the coach as well. Have you not planned that when it comes back to you, here's your 2 or 3 options. You can go into there, you can go there, and if it's not on, you go longer.
Well,
and it was obvious in the game.
Can I ask about that? Because that's really important. This is the one situation, right, where you're starting where you can decide everything. It's almost like in American football when a quarterback, hikes the ball. You can tell people where you want them to stand, where they're moving. It's like a set piece, but you're actually playing with it, right? Are you suggesting you would have expected to see some basic patterns of play where Raya would have 1, 2, 3, 4 reads and options and
absolutely.
stuff?
That.
Does he have them and he's not executing because he's not particularly good?
Well, that's what we don't know. I mean, when I was lucky enough to play as a youngster under a coach called John Cartwright, who was the England youth team manager, and it was a time in the early 80s where he wanted everybody to play out from the back because that's what the foreign teams did, and if you're playing international football, that's what we wanted to do. And I was the sweeper, and we had significant plays. The right back ran their left winger out the way so that a midfield player could go out there and get the ball.
Right.
The two centre halves would split, and I'd come through with the ball, and so you had all these set moves.
So you were doing this 40 years
They were
ago.
doing
So
this
we
40
assume Arteta's doing
Yeah.
this now, but
And it
just
looked to
Raya's
me
not
as though
executing.
Raya didn't have a thought in his head where my next pass is going to be. And there was one obvious pass to me that was on all the time, was the big switcher play from, when he had time on the ball to hit Jesus. Yes, he was up against Guardiola, but he didn't have to play it in the air. He could have played it almost into the feet so Jesus could. That was the ball that caused Man City most problems. But he kept on putting his foot on the ball, looking at everybody, think, no, I won't pass it there. I will. Of course, it caused them problems.
Yeah, I think one of the problems we've got as well is that it was a late signing in the window. So I don't think Arsenal have worked on this. And I think and it's a similar one with United and Onana. But I think to have a ball-playing keeper, and you have to make sure that your outfield players are aware of what he wants to do with it, how he wants to do it, and the keeper understands what he's got in front of him. Now, you can't just change one sort of goalkeeper for another without working on it. And you have to be a really, really good team to have a ball-playing keeper. And that,
But
Arsenal have a good team.
let's go back to the last. Ramsdale made quite a few mistakes when
Yeah.
he was playing. He was the last 6 or 7 games last season. Every time he got the ball, I thought he was going to give it away. So he's not a great goalkeeper.
No, but are the players in front of him comfortable enough on the ball to be able to deal with it and to be able to make the space for the goalkeeper? I mean, we're talking about, Pep brought this in really, but Claudio Bravo that season at City was a disaster. It didn't work and he was awful. Eventually got Edison brought in, and I think you have to work on it, but your defenders and midfielders also have to be capable of playing with it. Now, I think Arsenal have got a decent chance with their defenders. I think they're much more comfortable on the ball than the Man United defenders are. You've got Onana at Old Trafford who has got 4 defenders in front of him oftentimes who don't want the ball at the feet. I think it's a bit different at Arsenal, but you can't just drop a keeper in because Ramsdale started the season playing a certain way, and then the Everton game away from home, all of a sudden Raya's in goal, and then the defenders have got to play a different way. They've got to face a different way, haven't they, really? Rather than looking forward, they've got to look over the shoulder thinking, is he passing it short, is he going long? And it's just confusion. And one last thing, the fans at the Emirates don't understand it because they were getting really, really agitated yesterday. Now, I think they're worried about the risks that he's taking, but that's what Arteta wants. He came out after the game and said, I want him to do that. So the fans also have to get on side because if the fans are getting edgy and jittery, it'll reflect onto the pitch as well.
I mean, all right, in a very cruel, heartless sort of sport asset accounting of players, Arteta has a bit of luxury. He's given Raya all the support. He's come out and he said, even like you just told us, Mark, this is what I want him to do. If it doesn't work out, you're not on the hook because he's only on loan, right? And you ship him back to Brighton or wherever he came from. So, not that in a really cruel way, there is kind of a more limited downside than if, say, you'd spent 50 million on him, like maybe that club at Old Trafford.
So I think it says more, in my view, that he doesn't like Ramsdale. That's what it says. He's not because Arsenal fans will say Ramsdale was brilliant for them last year. Pundits will say he was brilliant. I didn't think he was quite so good.
North London derby that wins you a lot of credit.
And it just tells me Arteta doesn't fancy him.
2 other quick points on this. One, you brought up Grealish. Obviously, you feel that Grealish should have played. I think there was a point when I'm wondering why aren't Grealish and Doku on the pitch. We saw Doku, we didn't see Grealish. It's not that Foden played badly. Alvarez, I was disappointed in. What's he thinking there, Mark? I mean, you live closer to Pep's house than I do, so you would know.
You're asking me what Pep is thinking. I mean, nobody can tell what Pep's thinking ever. But I think yesterday they needed somebody like Grealish, a creative who could have broken the lines a little bit better because it was a very kind of limited.
I have to disagree with you on this. Grealish is not the player he was at Aston Villa. When he was at Aston Villa, he ran past, but I haven't seen Grealish run past anybody.
But he became a better player in his second season. I think he's become a City player.
Square and back. He'd have just done what all the other players from Man City were doing yesterday.
I think he's a bit more bolder than that. I think you're right. He doesn't run at players anymore. I won't say he was selfish. He was selfish for the right reasons at Villa. But I think he's developed. I think second season at City was really good. The first season he didn't know what to do. But I do think they miss him in that final third. And when Doku came on, I think he's had a great start to the season. Again, I'm surprised it didn't do more. I'll play more yesterday. It's just Pep. Pep does try and confuse us all the time.
Yeah, but I also wonder very simply, I mean, what Grealish does and Doku does is they're good at winning free kicks. Certainly better than Julian Alvarez is, right? In terms of running at people. There's no shame as well. You win free kicks, set pieces. I've got Ake who's good in the air. I've got Ruben Dias who's good in the air. I've got Gvardiol who's big in the air. Okay, I don't have Rodri. I have that Haaland fellow who's long and tall. How about I take my chances on that against an Arsenal side who, you've got the center backs and you have Rice off the top, unless I'm forgetting somebody. There's nobody else who's particularly good in the air,
Also,
right?
Where
So
was Alvarez playing? Alvarez was sort of playing through the right wing, come inside right, which would have been ideal for Doku, who's then going to go at people with more pace. Whereas Alvarez is a centre forward, come number 10, who's out of position out on the right hand side, and that's why he doesn't play particularly well out there.
I think Pep and Juan Mali are having a lot of conversations in their post-mortem right now. Final point, after the game, Kyle Walker got into it with this Arsenal set-piece coach I'd never heard of, but who used to work at Man City. Is this relevant? Is this a thing? A lot of players got involved. Do we want to speculate about what was said? Was he asking about Kyle Walker's tattoo, maybe?
I might defer to Stu on this. I'm sure he's been in a few tunnel bust-ups in his time, especially at
Well,
Wimbledon.
I think Arsenal at the moment are a side that when they win a game, they wind everybody up. They over-celebrate it. They go mad on the field. They wind up the opposition.
Because City are kind of used to it, and Arsenal aren't.
Yeah.
That's understandable, right?
But I mean, at the Community Shield, the celebrations at the Community Shield and the way they did everything and the crowd stand back, I mean, it's mind-blowing, really. And that's what they're trying to do. They're what the opposition, when they lose to Arsenal, are getting wound
But
up.
it's like the classic case. It's show me a good loser, I'll show you a bad loser, that sort of thing. And I think, back in the day when Arsenal lost at Old Trafford, the whole Pizzagate thing, that was because they weren't used to losing. City aren't used to losing, and they're reacting in a negative way. So it's not a bad thing. I think it just shows what sort of a team of winners they are.
I'm just disappointed here at the Grinch who stole football. Like, too much celebration when they win. Come on,